Okay, welcome. If you are just joining me, here we go. We're going to go trig functions, trigonometry. Trigonometry is actually the study of angles. So with trigonometry, it will always happen with right, R-I-G-H-T, right triangles. So trigonometry always happens with right triangles. Here we go. First part you got to memorize. So I'm going to write this over here. So sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent. Now some people memorize this as SOHCAHTOA. I do not memorize that way because I do not memorize how to spell so or ka. But there we go. With that being said, since it always happens on the right triangles, you're looking for angles, you're looking for segments, on we go. Alright, so example number 1, here we go. You got a right triangle. With this being a right triangle, here we go. I'm going to put a 57 degrees here. I'm going to put an X here. And I'm going to put a 15. Now, with that being said, I'm going to pause for just a second. And I'm back. With this pause, what I was trying to do is to try and make sure. Alright, so here's the angle. You always start with the angle. Where do you start? Angle. That's right. Where do you always start? Angle. The reason why is you're always going to follow this formula. The function of an angle is always equal to the side over the side. This is the formula that we're going to follow. Function of an angle is a side over a side. With that being said, you always start right with the angle. You always start where? The angle. Which angle do I know over here? The 57. I will never, ever start with the 90. Ever start with the 90. Now, here we go. So 90 degrees. With the 57, I will start with the 57, and I'm just filling in this right here. I start with the angle, which is 57. So I am going to have 4 slots. Let me do it. Let me change tactics a little bit. I got a 1, I got a 2, I got a 3, I got a 4. I got 4 slots. So I'm going to do function, I'm going to do angle, I'm going to do side, I'm going to do side. So those are my 4 columns. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I always start where? Angle. Good. So I'm going to start with my 57 degrees. So with that 57 degrees, then I'm going to go to my side. What 2 sides do I have? I have a 15, I have an X. Why did I not use this side? Because it's blank. Hello, because it's blank. That's why you don't use it. So you use the blank side. So you got a 15 and you got an X. So let's decide. If I'm going to start with this 57, let's go over to that 15. Now, it looks like 15 is going to be the hypotenuse. That's how I decide where it's going to be. So the 15, I'm going to use the 57 right here, and that's going to be my hypotenuse. So now I look at the X. Now the X. Now adjacent would mean attached. Is the X attached to the 57? Does it make it up? No. This would be adjacent. So this would be the opposite. So the X is the opposite. So now you got to think in your gray matter, in your little noodle. Hypotenuse opposite. Hypotenuse opposite. Hypotenuse opposite. Which function am I going to choose? That's how I decide which function I'm going to choose. I'm going to look at what I'm given. I'm being given the hypotenuse and the opposite. So am I going to use tangent? No, because it has opposite and adjacent. Am I going to use cosine? No, adjacent hypotenuse. Am I going to use sine? Opposite and hypotenuse. Ding, 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 ding. Sine, sine, sine. So I'm going to use the sine. So what I'm going to do, I got sine. I'm going to use this box right here. Sorry, it's getting a little puddly right here, but poof, sine. So function. What function am I going to use? Sine. So I'm going to do sine. Sine. What angle am I going to use? I'm going to use the 57 because that's the one that's given. Sine 57 degrees is. Now, you look over here. Sine angle opposite over hypotenuse. So, is it going to be 15 over X or is it going to be X over 15? You got to choose. That's right. It's X over 15. Why? Because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine is opposite X over hypotenuse 15. Now, There we go. I'm going to explain in another little math podcast of how to actually, the mathematical way, it's called cross multiplication and all that stuff. But if the x is on top, where is the x on top? If it's on top, you're going to multiply it. You're always going to compare those two numbers right there. You're always going to compare the 15 and the sine 57 right here. So you're going to compare them. If the variable's on top, you're going to multiply. So your final answer, x, is going to be whatever that bottom was times sine of 57 degrees. So you're going to type that in your calculator. X is 15 times sine of 57. You calculate, I'll calculate. So here we go. So I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me see. Here we go. 15 times sine. Now in my big calculator I can type sine. It's above the 7. Sine of 57. Enter. And I get 12.58. Ooh, 12.58. So my answer is 12.58. Done. Yo. I got it. That is how you do sine of the trig functions. Now, I don't want to erase. I'm just going to make another podcast. So, that is the introduction. First of all, let me recap. Okay? Let me recap. You have to memorize these. You have to memorize those. You will go nowhere if you don't memorize these. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. SOHCAHTOA. If that makes sense to you, great. Use it. You will always follow this function right here. Function of an angle is side over a side. Say it. Function of an angle is side over side. Function of an angle is a side. Alright. Function of an angle is a side over a side. So, function, angle, side, side. Function, angle, side, side. So you always start where? I'm going to see if my red marker works. Start with angle. Thank you, Dory. Start with the angle. So you start with the angle, 57 degrees. So then I decided, okay, I have an x, I have a 15. I use my opposite and I have my hypotenuse. So SOHCAHTOA, sine, opposite hypotenuse, opposite hypotenuse. So there's the explanation. So I'm going to set it up. Function of an angle is a side over a side. Function sine angle 57. Side is opposite over hypotenuse. X over 15. When the x is on the top, you multiply. So I do 15 times sine 57, 12.58. If you are interested in what happens with the variable on the bottom, watch the podcast, and it's called Variable on the Bottom. Thank you very much.